Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's Easy Mac here. Coming at you guys with some new content that I'm going to be trying to do. Ever since we have stopped doing the Breaking Point podcast with me, Rab, and Lion, I've been really looking for a way for me to make content. I can't really stream with the schedule that I have, and doing video content isn't really reliable for myself. So I thought with the major coming up, and I've been wanting to do this for a while, I thought why not start my own podcast where I discuss all stuff CDL, Halo, any other esports I'm in. Give my thoughts on the league, challengers, everything that's been going on lately, and yeah, just give myself a way to connect with more people, get some of my thoughts out there outside of Twitter, which is usually what I use with Reddit. But for those of you who don't know, I'm Austin Easy Mac. I've been in the scene now for 6 years now as either a coach or on the broadcast side. But I've been in the scene for a lot longer than that. I've pretty much been watching competitive Call of Duty since COD 4. I played but was never good for a couple of years. Um, then went to college, and then when I was in college, I was doing data entry for Argy Stats, which was a stats site that was covering during the Jetpack era. But I was just doing that just for fun on the side during some of the pro leagues, and then basically I was going to school for sports management and economics, and basically like what I wanted to do in my life was to get into traditional sports, doing something around like data, media, basically anything I can get my foot in the door. I was always really obsessed with statistics growing up. I'm a big fan of pretty much every single sport out there. My favorite is technically NHL, but pretty much everything I have going. Like even right now, I have the OKC game on my side. But yeah, so I basically wanted to get into traditional sports, but I always had a passion for esports. So I basically started making posts actually on the Optic Gaming subreddit about their CS team, about their Call of Duty team. Um, was doing that for fun while I was finishing up my last 2 years of college. I would post basically matchup data for the Optic CS team. I would post like practice results for the Optic COD team, which actually, funnily enough, got me roasted by Damon Karma because I was posting like their strengths and weaknesses like every week after practices. Um, and yeah, I was making a lot of content on the Optic Gaming subreddit. I used to post like content ideas for Hitch and just a whole bunch of stuff because coming up, I was always a big fan of Optic. I was actually always a big fan of FaZe. Like I always loved their both of their CS's teams. Um, a lot of stuff. I used to refer both of those teams pretty hard. Um, but basically, I used to post all the practice data. I used to post all the CS breakdowns. I used to do a lot more too on Twitter. When Black Ops 4 hit, I was doing the specialist data. So I would do which player was the best with the Prophet, which player like the Tempest, which was the best with the War Machine, with the Grav Slam, which teams utilized the extra health. I forget what the medic was called, but basically I was doing all that um, in college, and then this was in Black Ops 4, right at the beginning of the year, and one of the phase coaches hit me up, but he did so through Ben J. Nassim. So I got a random DM one day from Ben asking me if I'd ever be interested in doing what I was doing already, but doing it privately for the FaZe team. Um, and at the time, this was right after FaZe actually failed to qualify for the Pro League. So they were out for the year. So I was actually really confused because at the time I was actually in talks with Denial, which was the French team, with Whalers. And then I was in talks with one other team at the same time, and I was trying to help out and TP and um, oh my God, he's gonna kill me. Um, Shane, because he was on, I think he was on Reciprocity, or he was coaching for some team, and TP. So I actually made them like how they like did their data. Like I actually made them like some spreadsheets that they ended up using for like 2 years after that. It was actually really funny because at Champs that year, I was like walking around and like 3 or 4 teams had my same exact setup that I was using, just because I was trying to help as many teams as I could to get my foot in the door. And then, so this was, so they hit me up at the beginning of the year. I ended up joining the team for London, was my trial month. And that was when the infamous clip of the grab slam killing um, two of our players after the time clock expired, but it gave them the kills and gave them the win, the Luminosity phase. So that was my first tournament. I ended up getting signed with Atlanta Phase that the that fall, going into the start of the CDL, and then I was with Atlanta Phase for 4 years after that. Let me see, MW19, Cold War, Vanguard, MW2. Yeah. Um, and then last year I actually got let go. We had the longest off season in CDL history, and just a lot of teams just cut back staff because it just saved a lot of money on salaries. You didn't have to pay for 6 months while no one was doing anything. And in that time, I basically like worked on myself, worked on learning coding. I worked on basically like going around to different esports and learning what they were doing, trying to make myself both a better analyst and grow and get better at what I was doing. So I actually worked for HCS doing stats producing. I worked for ALGS doing stats producing, um, and then I have also been able to have the opportunity to watch some CS stuff, both on the broadcast and on the team side to see how they practice. Same thing with Valorant and Overwatch. That's actually something I think is extremely important for anyone that's trying to get into this. Learning from different esports and how people do stuff is really insightful for how to approach stuff differently, how to add stuff to what you do. And luckily enough, like being able to do that, I've actually learned a lot going into this year. Um, so this year, I am not coaching or being an analyst for a team. When I got let go, basically all the top teams already had their analysts, and all the bottom teams really didn't want to spend money until basically November, December is when they started getting all their staff. And I couldn't really wait that long. So I ended up doing stats producing for Esports Engine. I am the CDL stats producer. Basically, what that is it's making all of the stat graphics that you see on stream. So the team versus teams, the player versus players, the monster pre-games, any pre-game graphics, any like breaking records, stuff like that. I data entry, um, and then I prep all of the casters. I give them notes and give them a bunch of spreadsheets to try to prepare themselves for the tournament, for the matches, so they can craft storylines and craft narratives that they like and want to try to bring to the broadcast. Um, I actually work with a bunch of amazing people. A lot of people don't know. They think the CDL is just kind of like everything, but in reality, the CDL is more like competitive operations, and then they're kind of like an oversight. But the people that do the broadcasts are actually Esports Engine, which a lot of them have been doing the broadcast for years, like back to the MLG days. Um, so they are the group of people that have been doing this for a while. Um, I've been lucky enough to work with basically the guy that got me into this was Ethan Spencer, who's been since the MLG days. Um, and then this year I've worked with three producers that are just awesome at what they do. Um, I work with the graphics team that consists of this guy named Jamie, who is the creator of like CDL TV, the ticker that you see at the bottom of the screen. Him and the whole graphics department, Shelby and Chris, come up with all the graphics, the design, like everything you see on stream. They honestly are amazing people. Like people rag on the CDL, but they don't realize that there are a lot of amazing people that work behind the scenes that absolutely kill at their job. And people think like, oh, the CDL, I hate that. I hate this, that, and the other. But in reality, like a lot of the people just hate the format, and they might not like how the CDL is ran, but there are a lot of things that are not the CDL, like teams, players, broadcast, events. Like that stuff is actually less of the CDL than you think. Um, there's a lot of hardworking people that go on in that, and basically, like even if the CDL was to go away, like a lot of these people would continue working in the scene. Um, but basically, the broadcast is just full of just a lot of people that absolutely kill it and put a lot of time and effort into it. But yeah, so that's basically what I do right now. I also work at well, I'm a co-founder of Breaking Point. Um, Me and a group of people created that back in, geez, Modern Warfare 19 now. It got sparked by actually COD Gamepedia, their Twitter account, and a bunch of stuff went down. So there was a group of, I believe, 6 of us. RG, me, Nick Arts, who was working for COD Gamepedia, Spoons, who was doing a lot of the data for COD Gamepedia, Tactical Rab, Crone, Lion Man. We basically grouped up, and the whole idea was we'd do so much stuff outside of each other for the scene. Imagine if we grouped up and started working with each other and had a site to work on and, use all of our power together. And basically, we were able to bring on a lot more people that have done amazing things. Sadly, a lot of the core group, we kind of like fell apart originally. We brought on some more people, and yeah, it's been going great ever since then. This year was the year we did the major upgrades to the site. Um, a lot more in the future is going to happen, but it's just great not to be on a Wix platform anymore and to just have our own site that we can build off of. But I have that. I also do the HCS stuff and the CDO stuff. So that is me and my path into the scene. Basically, this podcast I'm going to be using to talk about the CDL, talk about anything else that I do for my work, um, and talk about other esports that are interested in me. And in future episodes, I'll do a lot more talking on like the CDL and my opinion of how it's not how it's ran, but how it's formatted. And like in my perfect world, what I would change, because I think there's a lot of good that the CDL has, but it just needs to be slightly adjusted, so that it doesn't grow as stale, and that we can get this like more highs throughout the season and get a lot more out of it. But that's gonna be for another episode. This weekend we actually have the Miami Major, which is gonna be starting up on. This is technically Wednesday when I'm recording this. I'm gonna release this tomorrow, so it's starting on the day this releases. I'm actually really excited for Miami. Um, I'm not in Miami, but I'm still gonna be working it. The Miami Major is honestly one of the most competitive ones I think we're gonna have, because we have legitimately four really good teams, and even though they're top heavy, like these teams are gonna have to match up pretty early on in the tournament. Um, and if one of them stumbles, it just opens up the door for another team that we might not think should be in the top 4 to get into a top 4 position. And honestly, I really love that. I think it's going to be really, really fun to see how the teams break down. So I'm basically going to start with that. The Thursday matches that we have going on are Texas, Miami, Toronto, and Las Vegas, New York, and Boston, and Atlanta versus LA Thieves. And basically, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through my bracket, who I think is going to win, go through that, some of the major storylines, and why I think they're going to win. Start out Texas Miami, right? Texas Miami is going to be a really tight one. They're at the top of the bracket. I always used to hate when our teams used to play the home team because they always come in with like little bit extra juice on that first day. It doesn't matter like where they are in form, like coming into it. It's always like a hard one to get across. I still think Texas is going to get by this one, just because overall they're just a much better team right now. Just going through game mode by game mode, their hard points are actually pretty similar in the last 30 days. Last 30 days, Miami is 5-3, Optics 7-5, but the real difference is just SD and Control. Right now, just focusing on Control. Optics actually 5-1. They're 6-1 over the entire stage. Miami's 2-3 in the last 30 days. Optic are in my opinion, the second best control team, knocking on the door from the first best control team. I think they're disgusting. They're really good across Invasion and Karachi. They're pretty unproven on high rise, which is why I would put them in second right now. But at the same time, with how control vetoes work, it's kind of like pick your poison, whether or not you want Invasion or Karachi. But it also opens up the door where Optics vetoes they don't have as much flexibility when they face somebody that um, is good at both of those maps. So that's a little bit of a concern, but overall they are a disgusting team in control, and that's why even though they start slow, they're not a very good um, map one and map two team, um, but they are a very very good map 3, 4, and 5. Even this stage right now, they're 5-0 in game fives. They've actually had the reverse sweep twice. Um, they've gone the game 5 4 times now. So they've been tried and tested in these late stage tournaments or late stage series. But at the same time, being 3-4 this stage in map ones and 3-4 in map twos is a little bit of a red flag. You really don't want to be pushing the distance on these series when you don't have to. But at the same time, that's online COD. And even though I don't think online COD is that different compared to LAN in terms of just like the Call of Duty that's being played, it's just at majors you reach a different level of energy, and that's where I think the big difference is. And I really think Optic's going to bring that. As long as they don't start slow, they're going to be fine. So I have them over Miami. The next one is Toronto versus Las Vegas, which I actually think is going to be the closest match of the day. A lot of people don't know this, but Las Vegas and Toronto are actually very, very close. Las Vegas is 8-4 in hardpoint. They're a very, very good hardpoint team. That's basically come almost out of nowhere. They're actually a better holding team and breaking team compared to Toronto this stage. Not by much, but they are slightly ahead. When looking at hardpoint or holding specifically, Las Vegas is at 85% hold rate. Toronto's at 79%, which is fifth. Las Vegas is first in that. Every single hold opportunity. So I have this stat we've been doing on the graphics, which is plus minus per HO, which stands for plus like net plus minus per hold opportunity. So every hold opportunity you get, let's say you get 30 points, the opponents get 10 points. That means you were plus 20. So Las Vegas on their hold attempts are plus 21.3 on every single hold attempt on average, which is just outstanding. Like they've been very, very good in hardpoint. And then when you look at S&D, Toronto has not been a good S&D team this stage. They rank 11th in opening duel win rate. And for those of you who don't know what opening duel is, that's the term I've kind of like brought over from CS, which is the opening fight, the opening duel, like who wins that. It's just another word for first blood, first death, first blooded, first blood. I never really liked that because it's really hard to like first blood percentage. It could mean two different things. So I kind of switched over to using opening duel win rate, like stuff like that. Opening duel is 1 per round, because that just is a little bit more clear for me. But Toronto ranks 11th in that category in opening duel win rate with 46.1, and they're only converting 74% of that, whereas Las Vegas wins 50% of their opening duels, which is only sixth, which is middle of the pack, but they convert 50 or 88.6% of those. So they're a little bit more polished around the edges in S&D. And in control, they actually have a better record than Toronto. Toronto is 4-3 in control. Las Vegas is 5-2. Las Vegas has the better defense, whereas Toronto has the better offense. So even though I think Toronto's going to win this one is the only one I have going to Game 5. I think this is the only one where I would consider having an upset, actually, even though I think Toronto is one of the best teams in this tournament. I still think Las Vegas is actually going to put up a huge fight in this one. And then we have New York and Boston, and Atlanta and LA Thieves. So those are my 2 3-0s. Boston hasn't really improved since they picked up ASUM. They've actually been not good in a lot of categories. You're going to see this in the pregame show, actually. While they have gotten better at rotation percentage, S&D attack, win rate, and they're much better on controlled defense, they've actually, one of their main strengths in hardpoint was hold rate. They had a 81% hold percentage. That's down to 66.7% with ASUM. They were winning opening duels like crazy. They had a 53.8% opening duel win rate in S&D. That's down to 46.8, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's actually a big drop off. And then one of the more damning things is the attacking in control. Before on stage one, they had a 53% win rate and they were capturing 3.9 ticks per round. That has dropped to 12% win rate in control attacking rounds, and they capture 2.5 ticks, which is just abysmal. Like, it's not good at all. So I actually think Boston's in a really bad spot right now. I think this is like winner's bracket is not a match they can make a run in. I think in the losers bracket they might be able to win a match or two. So I have them going down early on the Atlanta versus LA Thieves. That's just another one where even though Atlanta just lost to LAG, it's kind of like the same thing. Like, I went back and looked at the vetoes. Atlanta vetoed all of their best maps. I'm not making it that excuse. They still should have like blown out that match. And like my thing is like you never want to give teams confidence against you, and in losing that match 3-2 just gives all of the other top teams confidence that they can take down Atlanta, which I think is a mistake going into the tournament. Um, it is what it is. You can't bring it back. If you play that match another 10 times, I'm sure Atlanta would win 9 out of 10 of those. Um, but going into this, I still have them ahead of the Thieves. The only mode that I'm a little bit worried about for Atlanta is actually S&D. Thieves have been good. They're 6-3 this stage. They have a 62.3% opening duel win rate, which is first in the league. Atlanta does have the third best at 52.6, but they're 5-4 this stage. They haven't looked great. They have looked good during stretches, but they haven't looked great. And on the year, they're 3-3 in game fives. So they haven't really been strong in S&D. They've been good in hardpoint. They're 7-3. Their holding is good. Actually, this is a little nugget for you guys that you'll see tomorrow as well. So I have a couple of different statistics for holding. So to have a hold opportunity, you have to win the rotation. So I either have a rotation win, a rotation contested, or rotation lost. And if the rotation is contested, that's over the first like 20 seconds of a hill, then neither team will get a hold or break opportunity. It's kind of like a wash of a hill. If somebody wins the rotation, then then that's a hold opportunity for them. So I have a hold percentage, which is where you get the hold opportunity and you have more points during that hill than the opposing team. So let's say you get 25 points, the other team gets 24. That's technically still a hold, which is why I wanted to have more supporting statistics to back up some stats around that. So I also have points per hold opportunity. So that's when you basically take the entire points over the hill and you divide it by your hold opportunities. So Atlanta actually has an 84% hold rate, right? Which is great. It's fantastic. But they rank 12th in points per hold opportunity with 29% or 29 points. So what does that mean? It basically means that they are, imagine you have an orange and you're squeezing it and you're getting a little bit of juice out of it. That's basically Atlanta on these holds. They're squeezing the orange. They're getting the hold, but they're not getting a lot of juice out of it. Whereas other teams are just doing great at that. Like one team in particular is Las Vegas. They have an 84.8% hold percentage, which is very similar to Atlanta, but they average 3 more points per hold opportunity, which again doesn't sound like a lot, but times 10, 11 hills, that's a big lead they develop out of that. Because you got to remember this is only over 60 seconds, points per hold opportunity. So 3 points is actually a big margin. And then I also have plus minus per hold opportunity, which I kind of explained before. So Atlanta is plus 19.4%, which is actually much better than their points per hold opportunity, which means they're not getting a lot of points, but they're not allowing their opponents to get a lot of points. It just means that they're leaving the hill white a lot. Ideally, you would like them to get a couple more points per hold opportunity out of that, so their hold efficiency would be higher. So hold efficiency is the total points you got on, let's say, a hill, let's say on P1s, the total points you got on P1s divided by the total amount of time that you could have gotten, like the max amount of time on P1s. So let's say you played 2 P1s, that's 120 max points you could get. Let's say you got 60 out of those 120. That means your efficiency was 50%. So that's those are like the stats I have for holding and breaking. So right now, Atlanta's actually 12th in hold efficiency at 48.3%. So they're just leaving the hill white a lot. But luckily, their control, they are the best control team in the game. And to me, it's not far. They're 7-0 this stage. They're 2-0 on high rise, 2-0 on evasion, 3-0 on Karachi. They have the best life margin on both sides of the game. They're averaging plus 1.6 lives on attack and plus 8.1 on defense. So they're just outslaying by a ton. This stage alone, they're 14-1 on controlled defensive rounds, 5-0 on high rise, 5-0 on evasion, 4-1 on Karachi. They're just doing incredible right now. Abizi has a 1.39 KD, Salim has a 1.33, Draza has a 1.33, and Simp has a 1.15. It's just absurd. And even when they do get pushed to get to round fives, they're 2-0 on that this stage. They haven't lost the control since they lost to Texas on January 28th, which was an evasion. So they're on an 8-map winning streak in control. They've been blowing people out in it. So that's why I have them number one, and that's why I have them actually 3-0ing LA Thieves. I think you won't see a sub base for a while. I actually have a gut feeling that sub base is very similar to in Cold War. Quick story: we had Apocalypse come into the map pool. APOC was one of our best maps in scrims. We actually started scrims. It was something absurd like 45-2 over the first month of APOC scrims. We went 45-2, and over the first week, I think it was first 2 weeks of it was a major qualifier. Over the first 2 weeks, we played APOC 3 or 4 times, and we lost it 3 times. I know it was 3 times we lost it. So we had more losses on it in 3 to 4 matches in playing it than we did in an entire month of scrims. And it was just bonkers to me. But we continually tried making the players get it, be comfortable with it. Look what we're doing in practice. We just have to translate that into games. And we kept getting it into matches, kept losing it, and then sure enough, when champs came around, it was the reason we won COD champs that year. Was our Apocalypse. Getting your map pool 5 out of 5 is truly important in the grand finals when it's best of 7 for majors, best of 9 at champs. And honestly, Atlanta is very, very good right now on every map. On Karachi, their average margin of victory right now is 97 points. On Rio, it's 61 points. On Invasion, it's 78 points. So they're very good at all these maps outside of sub base. So I have a sneaky suspicion that either they're good at sub base and scrims, and they're trying to get better at it in matches, and it's not translating right now, or they're terrible at sub base, and they're just trying to get reps on that. So when they have to be good at sub base, they're going to be good at it. Because their map pool is pretty deep. But I fully expect that we're going to get probably a Karachi, or an Invasion. Probably an Invasion map 1, and then it will be a 3-0 for Atlanta. And then in the losers bracket, that would make Miami, Carolina, Las Vegas, Seattle, Boston, Minnesota, LA Thieves, and LAG. And this quick rundown, I think Miami's going to beat Carolina. Carolina has not looked good. I don't think they have looked good in a while. They looked good at the major and then kind of fell off. They're a decent hardpoint team, but they only are good at Skid Row and Subbase. They are terrible at Invasion. They are not that good at Rio. They don't play Karachi usually. So if you get Skid Row out, I really don't think I would be too worried about playing them in hardpoint. In control, they are a good high-rise team, but if you get high-rise out, they don't have a map pool in control. And then in S&D, they're a mixed bag, but they're on a slump right now. They've lost 6-2, 6-2, 6-1 going into this to 3 different opponents, LAG, Miami, and Las Vegas. So that isn't the hardest strength of schedule, and you still won 5 rounds over the last 3 S&Ds you played. So I have Miami advancing into the next round. And then we have Las Vegas, Seattle. Seattle, I actually think, is probably going to make a roster change going into next stage. Um, I said this when they made the roster change. Moving Abuza back to the AR was a win for them. Getting Brezzy, which should make him more comfortable, is a win for them. I think it really sets them up to bring over Cobra into the SMG role, or move Brezzy into the AR role, and then have Cobra come in. Uh, I don't think they're going to put up much of a fight. Las Vegas looks really good. I think Las Vegas had, again. I think if there's going to be someone that makes an upset in the round winners round one, it's going to be Las Vegas over Toronto. But for now, I actually have Las Vegas making it out over Seattle, and then we have Boston, Minnesota. Again, Boston has not impressed me at all, really. Minnesota can't finish games at all. Like, they look great in certain maps, and then they just can't finish at all. It blows my mind that they're 0-4 in map fives, and it's not even close. They've only won 7 rounds in 4 map 5s or game 5s since February 18th. It's actually absurd to me. They're not a good S&D team. They are not really a good hardpoint team. Um, they have wins on their decent Rio team and their decent sub base team, and outside of that, nothing. Um, and then in control, they don't play high rise, and they're decent at invasion and Karachi. So I have Minnesota making out 3-1 because we all know if it goes game 5, Boston's gonna win that because Minnesota can't win. And then in the final one, it's the Battle of LA again, LA Thieves versus LAG. I have the same thing, LA winning 3-1. I think LAG is probably destined to make some roster changes. I think what LA Thieves has done, even though they're not a great team, I think they've improved a lot. I think Nasty is a very good player. I actually messaged him when he got picked up. I was shocked he wasn't in the league to begin with. I think by being one of the first teams to move, LA Thieves got a very good asset for the rest of the season to pair with Gosi, who has been playing like really lights out in AR. So I have LA Thieves moving on. And then I'll go back up to the winners bracket now. So that would set up um, Texas, Toronto, New York, and Atlanta. So those are our big four. Um, and I actually have Texas taking down Toronto. I think Texas is not actually in their best form. I think with Kenny being sick, um, you're seeing them not be good early on in series. They're not coming out with this fire. They're not good at map ones and map twos. They were very lucky that they have been very good in control, or else they would have been stumbling. Um, in my opinion, and during tournaments, control is actually the most valuable mode in the entire series, um, because when you're down 0-2, control keeps you in the series. It gives you the motivation to bring it back. When you're tied 1-1, it breaks that stalemate, makes it so you can at least go to a map 5. It pushes the series along, gives you the advantage. When you're up 0-2 or 2-0, it puts the other team to bed. And that's why it's the most important game mode in a series at tournaments. It's so good at building momentum for you, and that's why if you're good at it, it just makes you a problem to put away in series. And that's why I think Texas and Atlanta are actually going to win both of their series to move on. Um, I think again, I don't think Texas is in their best form. I actually think they're one event too early. I think next event when they can build out S&D a little bit more, when they can get a little bit more out of hardpoint, because they're actually only 1-3 in their last 4 hardpoints. They've been trying to play Rio a lot. They're lost their last 2 Rios after starting 2-0. They did lose a Skid Row to Toronto, so they have played tough competition. Obviously, the last 2 were New York and Toronto, but I don't think they're in the best form going into this major. I think they're one major away from having like a Toronto-esque major, like Major 1, where they're just dominant. But I think they're going to make it by Toronto just because I don't think Toronto's in their best form either. So I have Texas going over 3-2, which they actually did versus Toronto quite recently, and so I have them doing that again. And then we have New York versus Atlanta. I have Atlanta getting revenge versus New York. Atlanta put in a lot of work into their S&D, which did not show actually versus LAG, which is a big red flag. But I still have Atlanta making it over New York to make it into the winners bracket finals against Texas. And then I'm going to drop down to the losers bracket again. We have Miami versus Las Vegas, and then we have Minnesota versus LA Thieves. I have Las Vegas basically blasting Miami. I don't like this matchup at all for Miami. Las Vegas is very technical right now. When you just look at their hard point, they're number one in hold percentage. They're number one in break percentage. They get a lot of plus minus. They're number one in holding plus minus per hold opportunity with 21.3. They're number two in breaking plus minus with negative 14.1. And you're probably confused. Why is plus minus breaking negative? Well, you're never going to have a positive one break wise, but you have to limit the damage every time you don't win the rotation, limit how much points you lose. And losing only 14 points per hold opportunity, or per break opportunity, while getting 21 per hold opportunity, means that you're net +7 every time. So if you just hold break, hold break, hold break, you're gonna be up +7 every two hills. Um, and I think that's why Las Vegas has been able to grind out these maps. And then when you look at S&D, they're the number one converting team when they win the opening duels. When they win the opening duels, they win 88.6% of the rounds, right? And what is Miami? Miami is the worst opening duel team in the CDL. They are terrible at that. They win 39.8% of your opening duels. Absolutely horrendous, right? That is terrible. And then who's the worst in the entire CDL at winning opening duels? Eric Boom, 33.3%. Who's right behind him? Metals, 35.9. So your two SMGs are just getting picked apart in the early round fights. I think this is going to happen here again. This is just not a good matchup for them at all. So I have Las Vegas 3-0ing Miami, sadly, to take them out of their home major. And then when you go to Minnesota and LA Thieves, I have LA Thieves making that out. Again, I think the Thieves are just as good hardpoint wise as Minnesota, a little bit better actually. And they're a better S&D team. And then in control, Minnesota will win the control, but I still have them winning 3-2 at worst. I just think they're a better team than Minnesota right now, in both hardpoint and S&D. And that would set up New York versus Las Vegas and Toronto versus LA Thieves. And sadly, I think that's where this skill gap in the league right now comes back into play. I have New York taking out Las Vegas 3-1, and then I have Toronto knocking out LA Thieves 3-2 to set up a New York versus Toronto losers semifinals. And that's where I would actually have Toronto coming out 3-2. I still think Toronto can't be disregarded, even though they had, to their standards, a slower Major 2 qualifiers. They're 9-2 in hardpoint. They're 8-1 in their last 9 hardpoints. Or 7-1, sorry, in their last 8 hardpoints. I still think they're just a really good team. I think they're probably going to take the hardpoints over New York. New York's going to split the S&Ds and take the control. So that would bring us to a game 5 where Toronto's going to win the game 5 S&D. And that would set up Toronto in the losers bracket finals. That would be I believe the first match on Sunday. The second match would be Texas versus Atlanta. And I actually have Texas winning that one 3-1. Sunday startup matches, historically Atlanta's not had the best record. I do have Texas winning that one, which would send Atlanta down to face Toronto. One thing that Atlanta does really, really good is they don't usually lose 2 series in a row. And when they do lose, they get really pissed off. And the second series is usually much, much more aggressive. And that's kind of when they're at their best. So I actually have Atlanta 3-1ing Toronto to make it back into a grand finals rematch versus Texas. And this is where the controls start coming back. I think Atlanta is slightly better in the controls. There's 2 controls in a best of 7. And while I think Texas is the slightly better hardpoint team right now, I think both of them, I think Atlanta has the edge on Karachi and Rio, but I think on sub base, they haven't really been good at Skid Row, Texas. But I think on sub-base and evasion they can fight back. And Rio is still with the two SMGs that they have. Can't really count them out. So I really think it's going to go down to a game seven. Actually, it's gonna be probably I don't remember the last time we've gone to the final map in the grand finals, but I actually have Atlanta winning 4-3. Um, as I kind of said earlier, like I don't think Texas is in their final form. I think in Major 3 during that Major 3 cycle, they're going to be look a lot better than what they look like right now, just due to lack of practice. They haven't really clicked on the new map, Rio. They started really good on it, but they kind of like tapered off against the top teams. So I think once they get their S&D fully into form, they're 6-4 in their last 10 S&Ds. They're 4-3 in their last 7. They're 4-1 in their last 5 though. So I think they just need a little bit more on the S&D, because a lot of their games either go to round 5, round 10. They're losing some S&Ds they shouldn't lose. They're losing some map ones they should never lose. So I think as long as they can clean stuff up, they're going to come back during the stage 3 looking much better. For this one, I do have Atlanta winning 7-3 or 4-3, which would give them their first major since last year, I believe, at Boston. Yep, that's the last time. Yep. Um, so that would give Atlanta one championship this year, and that would give Toronto one championship. And as I keep alluding to, I really do think Texas is going to win the third one, um, unless one of these teams comes in looking very good again. So yeah, that's my major. And for a major MVP, I don't even know if the CDL gives this award out. Um, oh yeah, Kleenex got it the first time around. So yeah, we do. For major MVP, I honestly really think if it gets that far, it's going to be either Simp or Draza. Um, both of those guys have been very good. Draza's been one of the best control players this season. Simp has been one of the best just point blank period SMGs this season. He's been flexing a lot and been very good while doing that. We've been saying for years that he's one of the best with the AR and SMG. So when he flexes and has a chance to show both of that, he's been disgusting. So I'm gonna pick probably him for the MVP if Atlanta wins it. And I think if Texas wins it, I'm actually gonna go Shotzi, who's had just an unreal stage. Like he's looked phenomenal, like really good. Kind of concerning is that the rest of the team has their moments. Like Dashi's looked really good for most of these, but sometimes we don't get the most out of everyone else when Shotzi's performing really well. So I think that just comes back to just getting everyone one more stage to really get on the same page. We'll do this team very well. I'm actually really bullish on Optic for the rest of the season. But yeah, that's my major run. And then a couple other things I want to talk about. HCS Arlington, because I know a lot of COD fans are fans of Halo, so I want to touch on that, and then I also want to touch on the Breaking Point Awards that we have going. So first off, I'll do the Halo real quick. That one was a lot of fun. That was in Arlington. That was the first major of the season for Halo. For those of you who don't know, Halo does opens, which are basically like 2Ks to earn HCS points, and then they do a major qualifier for the seeding, for who's going to make it into pool play. And going into it, there was a lot of question marks around some of the top teams. Optic was the 5th seed going in. Sentinels looked very good. A lot of people were picking them as their dark horse to do well. There was a lot of questions on how Legend was coming in for Space Asian, how he was working in, filling that role. And over in EU is like how is Quadrant and Foe going to be coming in. And instantly, like right as pool play was starting, we actually got got some shockers. Because I just remember I was watching, doing a lot of the prep work, and Sentinels just couldn't win a series. They lost to Shopify, they lost to Proton. You wake up Saturday, and the open bracket teams come in to play their pool play matches, and Cloud9 was in their group, and then they lost to Cloud9. I was like, damn, like what a collapse. And then on the other side of it, FaZe, Optic, and Space Station just looked insanely crisp. Same thing with Shopify. FaZe was 9-0, and then Shopify, Space Station, and Optic were 9-1 in map counts. Um, and then we had two European teams, Quadrant and Foe, make it out as the second seeds of their pool and advance to the upper bracket of the championship bracket. And then the other one was Complexity, who is another up and coming team in that top six range. Um, and really, Halo is actually a lot similar to Call of Duty this year. Call of Duty is extremely top heavy this season. We have four really good teams, and in Halo, it's actually been like that pretty much throughout its life cycle. We've had three really good teams, and then the fourth team has been kind of like constantly revolving. Originally, it was actually FaZe who was the third best team or fourth best team, with Fallocated and Bound and Boo Boo and Snipe Down during 2020 or 2022, and then Quadrant kind of came into that, and then this year it was kind of like everyone thought Sentinels was going to be that, but really Shopify and Complexity battled that out with Shopify finishing in fourth place at this tournament, which kind of gives them that edge for that fourth spot going into the rest of the year. Um, and while a lot of people actually don't like when stuff is top heavy, I actually like it because it gives you a lot of storylines going in. Like, will the top four perform how they should? Should they, if they perform how they should be in the upper bracket semifinals facing off against each other, which gives you great matches Saturday night. And then if those teams claw back, they usually play in the lower bracket finals. Um, and that's exactly what happened at this tournament, where Optic played FaZe in the lower bracket finals, and after Optic lost to Space Station in the upper bracket finals. Um, and that just gives so many good matches. And when one of those teams falters, like it falls early, that also creates a lot of storylines and a lot of like questions going into the next one. But in Halo, you always know those guys are going to be the main culprits on Sunday, which happened again, which I actually like. It just gives you the expectations going into it. And then, yeah, Space Station came out on top 4-3 in the grand finals. They came back from a 1-3 deficit. They really beat up on Optic in the final couple of maps. The strongholds, we were kind of hitting on it in the graphics that Optic was not at their best in strongholds, even though they beat FaZe pretty badly in the strongholds. They just didn't look. They didn't look 100%. We were watching a lot of the setups crumble, a lot of maps get really close when they shouldn't have been. Some players weren't stepping up 100% in strongholds. Formal was playing great in those, but yeah, they got beat pretty badly. It was pretty funny. I told Bravo and Onset, I was like, yeah, Optic should have the advantage in the Slayers, and they did not. I was really shocked that Optic lost all three Slayers because SSG was not looking good in Slayer. They were losing a lot of close maps. Optic was blowing out people, and then they lost the Streets 50-43, Live Fire 50-46, and then Aquarius to lose it 50-43 after getting 250-3 on Solitude Strongholds. Yeah, so congrats to SSG. Legend fit right in. For those of you who weren't able to watch, he picked up in Oddball and in Strongholds. He was doing a lot of what Penguin, now Dead Zone, used to do for SSG. He was like their main ball carrier. He was doing a lot of the objective work. But then in the Slayers and in CTF, he was slaying out like crazy. He was doing a really good job on those modes. It allowed Bound to get really aggressive. He didn't have the best KD, but when looking at his damage and his damage difference, he was putting out a ton of damage. He was getting a lot of assists. So he was doing his job. Stellar was doing his job slaying. Stellar ranked in the top 10 for damage dealt in all damage dealt per 10 minutes in all 5 game modes. Same thing for kills per 10 minutes. He was literally in the top for those, even though he didn't have the best KD. I believe Fallocated had the best for the entire tournament, but those guys did their jobs because Legend allowed them to, and Eco was being the glue guy. So that team played extremely well. But one thing I noticed, Halo needs a codcaster, man. Like, it is so hard to read the scores of a Slayer. You're just sitting there staring at the bottom. You can't tell what the score is. No mini map. You can't set up, the storylines behind the power weapons, behind, OV, behind the camo. Um, and I think Halo's in such a unique spot where they could literally have the codcaster be from a UNSC ship, like looking at, like, have it as if it's like watching Spartan teams train. Um, and I think you could have a really really cool, codcaster with a mini map, way better way to see the scores. Um, and I don't know, like Halo is so fun to watch, but until they get that, I think that's what's separating them from taking that step up. Is it's just so hard to watch sometimes because even though the individual plays are so sick to watch, on the team level you can't really tell what's going on. It's so hard to keep track of things if you're not like know about the game to a high level. Um, and I think that's unfortunate because I don't know if having a codcaster is in their plans. I don't think it is. Um, and I just think that's really unfortunate because if they had that, uh, they would be in a much, much better spot, just like viewership wise, like viewing experience wise. Um, so that's honestly what I think they should be focused on for the next game if they're making one. And then the final thing I actually wanted to touch on for HES was the event accommodations. Um, I think a lot of people were shocked that Stellar got the Slayer, and Lucid actually got the objective. Um, and so how those event accommodations are done is they're done through uh, rankings. And for objective, it's caps for 12 minutes, steals for 12 minutes, oddball ball time for 10 minutes, strongholds caps for 10 minutes, Koth hill time for 10 minutes. Um, and basically the players are ranked in all of those and then averaged out. And Lucid was the highest one, um, when looking at all those. Uh, Going into when he was picked for that, he was averaging 1.7 caps for 10 minutes, which was best at the tournament. 2.3 steals for 12 minutes, which was fifth best. So it was showing that he was getting steals. He was getting active in the opposition space. He was getting the flags out and making those runs. Um, he was 30th in oddball time at 28, so he wasn't that great at that, but he also actually wasn't that far away from his number one on his team, um, which I also thought was important. He wasn't that far away from his top leading teammate, so they were kind of like spreading out the work, which is a good thing. If one person's getting all the ball time, it means the other three aren't doing like anything. Like on Quadrant, for example, Snipe Drone was getting 81.4 seconds of ball time per 10 minutes. Which was the highest in the HCS, which just means his teammates are getting nothing. Um, so being at that level was good for him. And then he was ninth in stronghold caps for 10 minutes at 8.5, and he was second in King the Hill time, per 10 minutes at 78.1. So even though it was kind of like a shock for a lot of people that saw him get the objective award, um, he was actually clear cut the number one on the ranking. The next closest person was Boo Boo and Snakebite. Um, and Snakebite is usually the recipient. Boo Boo has gotten them in the past too. But yeah, Lucid was actually up there. And that's why when we look at these, we make it based around stats and not just an opinion. Um, and this one was backed by stats. And then for this support one, we have two different rankings. We have one where it's assists and damage for 10 minutes in all five modes, in which I believe Suppressed was number one, Dead Zone was number two, and then actually Stellar was number three. And then we did a ranking with just assists in all five game modes, and Dead Zone was number one by far. Um, He was, at the time when we did this, he was number one in CTF with 15.7. He was number two in Strongholds. This is all per 10 minutes with 12.1. He was fourth in Slayer with 10.9 assists per 10 minutes. In King of the Hill, he was 12th with 10.5. And then his lowest ranking one was Oddball, where he was 19th. Oh, yeah, can you believe it? 19th with 8.9 assists per 10 minutes. Um, so he was by far the number one support player. And when we look at support, we do damage as well because you want a player that's doing team shots, that's putting out damage, that's getting the assists. So that's why damage done and assists is a good way to look at that. Um, and that's kind of like how we use the rankings for that. And the final one was Slayer. So Slayer is actually one of the harder ones to do. I don't want it to be just, oh, who has the highest overall KD? Boom, that's what we're gonna do. Um, and in Halo, it's actually really difficult to have like overall stats because in like Call of Duty, we can do respawn KD, Slayer rating. Um, you can do adjusted KD. You can do. Um, I have my Slayer rating. I have a defense. I have a damage rating now that I've been making. I have tests, which is the percentage of engagements that end in a positive interaction, which is uh, a kill or an assist. Um, in Halo, there isn't really any of that. It's just KD, and they have KAD, which I don't really like. I switched it over to KA/D, so that's kills and assists divided by deaths. Um, that's also what I use in COD, but there hasn't really been anything else in Halo, so I've been slowly trying to get more and more stats in. But the problem is Halo broadcasts are only 3 days, so it's actually really hard to create a stat or bring over a stat from Call of Duty um, that is useful in Halo, and to get the general audience to understand it. When you look at like Call of Duty, for example, I've been pushing points per hold opportunity, points per break opportunity, like points per HO, points per BO, plus minus per HO, um, and the casters and the devs do a really good job of explaining that to you guys during the qualifiers. And imagine if we didn't have the qualifiers to do that, and then those were just all hitting you at the major. You'd be very confused at that. Some of you are very confused at that already. Um, but the goal is to slowly keep introducing that so the general audience will understand it eventually. And then we can start using more and more advanced analytics in the broadcast. And that's really hard in Halo for me, just because there was none really before. So I've been using Slayer rating. So in Call of Duty, that is hardpoint kills per 10 minutes times 2, plus SMD kills per round times 22, plus control kills per 10 minutes, and then you add that up. So that's a full 5-game series right there. That's projecting based on their averages how many kills they would get in a full 5-game series. So I've been doing that for Halo now as well, but I've basically been doing kills per 10 minutes for each mode and then adding that all together. So overall, I have KD, KDA, and Slayer rating. And then for the Slayer award, so basically what we did was we did kills per 10 minutes, KD, and damage per 10 minutes across all 5 modes with KD, KAD, and Slayer rating for the overall. Ranked everyone, averaged it all out. And then I actually did 3 different rankings. I did one with all of that. I did one with just all the KDs. And then I did one with all of the KDs and damage. And Stellar with all of it included was the number one player. With just the KD and damage, he was the number one player by far. He was in the 2, 3. Yeah, so he was in the top 8 at the time we did the accommodations for damage for 12 minutes or 10 minutes. He was number one or in the top 8 in every single mode, and then in kills per 10 minutes, he was in the top 5 for 3 of them, and then just in Strongholds and Slayer, he wasn't in the top 5. But for overall KD, he was in the top 5. For Slayer rating, he was second, and then for KD, he was ninth. When just looking at KDs, Lucid was number 1, but when including everything else, he was the number 2 in that. So that's why Lucid was the objective player, Stellar was the Slayer, Dead Zone was the support, and Best Man was the obvious choice for the coach. That was his highest placement as a coach in Halo Infinite for Shopify Rebellion, was top 4 placement. So the event accommodations are a lot of fun. It's about putting more of a ranking behind it instead of just an eye test, and I think that's been going really, really well. It's just explaining that and getting that more out there, and more people will be able to understand it. The final thing I'm really going to talk about for this episode is the Breaking Point Awards. So the Breaking Point Awards is something that like I've been wanting to do for a while. Um, I'm again a big fan of traditional sports. I'm a big fan of NHL. Big fan of the NFL. I love the awards they do. Um, it hurts me that we have not been doing awards in Call of Duty uh, since the start. That's why I've been doing the top 20 player list since Black Ops 4. I think that's really important. So when you look back at a time period, you at least have a sense of how people felt at that time. Because it's really hard to look back now at like AW and be like, who is your top 20 players? Because you don't really remember the lows as much. You more remember rose tinted. These were the highlights. You don't really get to see the player stats because all the VODs are gone. Um, can't even watch the games anymore to get an eye test because all the MLG.TV VODs are just gone. Um, so one thing I really wanted to do was bring in the NHL style awards where we have a bunch of awards for each aspect of the game. So this season, I have made the Rookie of the Year, the MVP, SMG Player of the Year, AR Player of the Year, Objective Player of the Year, and then I have one for each game mode, so Hardpoint, S&D, and Control. And then we do have a couple more. We have the Coaching Staff of the Year, which is pretty much just going to be based off of results and expectations going into tournaments, how you do based off your expectations, um, and try to find a way to put some more statistical categories into that, so it's not just all on wins and losses and how your players are doing. But for now, we're going to try our best for that. We're going to have a clutch one, which is just going to be based off of the clutch leaderboard, like who's the most clutch player in the league. Um, I do want to add the content award for the player that did the best or not put out the most, but gave it their best effort to make content this season. Um, I feel like we need to highlight and reward players that have been doing that. That's a really important part of the future of Call of Duty. Quick tangent. When I was doing BPL, the professional one, anytime I asked for help from the league, from sponsors, from so many different people, and literally every single time I had meetings, the first question people would ask is, how many players are streaming? How many players made YouTube videos? Um, Literally every single meeting I took, that was the first question. I couldn't believe it. But I would go back, look who was streaming, look who was doing everything. And it's actually really hard to get players streaming. That's something that even Activision looks at. Looks at all the Warzone streamers, looks at all the COD Mobile streamers, and then looks at how we don't really have a lot of streamers in competitive. Not a lot of players keep up with it. Not a lot of players want to do it, especially during the season. And it hurts. It hurts our potential to get more stuff thrown in because we don't look like we can advertise as much and be as marketable as we could be in the past when every team, every player was at least putting an effort in, and we had the big players like Nade and Scump doing that, leading the way. But people like Kenny, Ghosty, Draza, those guys that were streaming BPL, putting in the effort to make YouTube videos and stuff, like I will be forever grateful for those guys because they put in immense amount of effort to do that, and I want to reward people that have been doing that all season long as well. So that's why I want to put in a content award. We're also going to be trying to do an all-star festivity and an all CDL, which is going to be like the all NBA award. But I want to do an all CDL, at least like 2 teams, just to have a good list of awards, and then eventually have these awards named after retired players, be able to sponsor these, um, give players the recognition and you know just everything they deserve for putting in either the individual level of play this season, putting in the effort to make content around our esport, and yeah, basically everything. So I just want to run through because I have not made a update on the rankings on the site since March 1st. I have been extremely busy with just everything going on. So I thought this was going to be a good place to actually make those rankings, make a little bit of an update for where I think everything is right now going into this tournament. And of course, like I fully expect this tournament to change a lot. So starting off with the Rookie of the Year. Rookie of the Year has actually been one of the more interesting ones for me because I actually think this rookie of the year class hasn't been as strong as years past, but the rookie of the year, like all the rookies are actually really close in performance. There isn't anyone that's like blowing anyone out of the water. Like we don't have a Wembanyama situation like in the NBA. Like him and Chat are just so far ahead of everyone else. Um, but right now I have Linz in my number one spot. I have Gwyn right behind him, and then I actually have Gio in third. I've thought Gio has been phenomenal. I think Gio's been one of the best players on Las Vegas right after Attach. Um, and then I have Snoopy. A lot of people don't think Snoopy's been that impressive this year, but I actually think he's been decently consistent. Um, he has on the season a .99 in hardpoint. He has a .95 in control, and he has a 1.08 in S&D. S&D is always going to be his bread and butter, but to see him perform a little bit closer to average SMG play in the respawn modes is what he was missing last year at champs and in scrims. So I think like him getting a little bit more consistent in the SMG, playing good in S&D. He just has to continue growing and getting better. But I have him in fourth, and then the fifth place spot is honestly wide open. For now, I have it for Abuza just because he's been one of the best S&D players, like period. He has a 1.19 in S&D, but he's also been one of the most clutch S&D players in the game. He actually is tied for the lead with 8 clutches in the CDL. He has the most 1v1s won at 6 for the season. He has 2 1v3s won. He has 2 like ace rounds. He has kills in 51.8% of rounds total, which is really good. And that's on a Seattle team that just hasn't been that good. And he's been doing that. He wins 54% of his opening duel fights. Just overall, he has really, really strong control numbers. It's just his respawn hasn't been good. But honestly, there is no one else really to take that fifth spot. Estreel has had moments of looking really good. But for now, I have him in there. Some people have been saying Purge, but Purge hasn't. He was. You can't ignore how bad he was in stage one. And even right now, he has a .93 in hardpoint. He has a .94 in S&D. He has a 1.08 in control. So he has not been blowing it up this stage. His Slayer rating is below average. His non-traded kills are below average. His respawn KD is below average. His damage for 10 minutes in hardpoint is one of the worst in the league. His control damage for 10 minutes is not good. So I can't put him in the top 5 unless Las Vegas places like top 4 this stage. I don't really see how he could jump up that high, especially after like having a literally historically bad first stage. But maybe later in the year, if he keeps performing how he is right now, he can sneak into that 5th spot. For the MVP, I haven't made an article on the MVP ranking. I don't really want to do that until it gets later into the season because I want that to mean something when we do those MVP rankings. I don't want it to be just something on a whim. Right now, personally, I have Scrappy as my MVP. He's been the best player in the league. And not only is he the best player in the league, he's the most valuable, in my opinion, to Toronto. He is that missing piece, that damage dealer that is just flying around, taking chows. Yeah, just utterly amazing what he's been able to do on that Toronto team. And I honestly hate MVP awards because a lot of people, just do the best player in the league. It's not the most valuable. It's not who actually is the most valuable to the team. And that's why I really hate MVP awards across every sport. I think they're really stupid how everyone discusses it. But for this one, I do have Scrappy as my MVP right now. For the SMG Player of the Year award, I have my rankings go Simp, Kleenex, Hydra, Shotzi, and Pred. That could be changed in any number of ways right now. I think there's a bunch of players that could take that 5th spot, and I wouldn't be shocked. Abizi has looked really well this stage. I think if he plays well at this major, easily could be in that spot. I think Linz has played very, very well. I think Kismet has been the best S&D player this season. Envoy has been playing terrific. I think he kind of mellowed off right now. But again, if Toronto has a good major, he's obviously
uh, at least in the conversation for top three, top four. Um, so I think this one's the most wide open going into this major. I just wanted to give Shotzi some love because he was insane. In the series records, um, the high kills in a series, he now has the fifth spot with 103, but he also had multiple series with over 90 kills. Um, he has 99 against Carolina in four maps. Was just insane. He's been playing very well. So credit to him for lighting it up. I wanted to reward him for that. In my ARs, I have Scrap, Stellium, Insight, and then honestly, I have no clue how to do the final two, um, because it could literally be Skies and Attach. It could be Dashy and Skies. It could be Dashy and Attach. Um, I think this major is actually going to be really good for separating that. Like, can Attach perform against the best? Because when he did play Toronto last time, he struggled bad. So I want to see how he does against some of these top teams on LAN. Um, so yeah, and Insights hasn't been that good this qualifier. So if he has a not so hot major two, I think he's gonna fall down that list. Um, Draza's knocking on that door. Honestly, Geo is gonna be knocking on that door if he has a good stage three. Sib has returned into form. So and Ghostie's been sneaky good. I don't think he's good enough to. I don't think his team has been good enough around him to get him into that conversation. But I don't see why not in the future. So the ARs is honestly wide open outside the top two. Um, this major's gonna do really well for that. For the individual game modes, I just have one player for now. I'm gonna start doing these more towards stage three, stage four. So in hardpoint, it's 100% Sib or Scrap for me. Scrap has been outstanding on the season. He is the number one damage per 10 minutes by 400. He has 4,736 damage per 10 minutes. Kremp is the number two player with 4,330. Kleenex is number three at 4,325. He is so far ahead in that mode with just how fast he plays. He's number one in kills per 10 minutes, number one in damage per 10 minutes, and number two in KD on the year. It's just insane. It's insane. And he's doing that with 58 seconds of hill time per 10 minutes, which is uh, it's about average. He's 25th in the league. Um, we do have quite a lot of the players that I've played now. We're up to 56. So he's average with hill time, but he's been absurd in everything else. For S&D, I am giving that to Kismet right now. Kismet was number one this stage with a 1.8. He has a 1.34 on the year. He's number one in KD. He is number one in kills per round with 0.83. He has a 64.8% opening duel win rate, which is just absurd for an SMG. It's right up there. Afro's actually had a really crazy year on that as well. Um, but yeah, got to give that to Kismet. And then in control, um, this might not be who someone would expect right now, but I have Celium. He has a 1.4 in the mode, which is just crazy. His damage and kills per 10 minutes are above average. They're not bad. They're actually closer than people would think to some of the other top players. He captures 1.6 ticks per attacking round, but where he's really honestly crazy is he has a 1.8 or 1.18 attacking KD. He has a 1.68 defending KD. He is actually absurd. His damage per life is number one with 286 damage per life. His defending KD is number one. His offensive KD is number two. His test rating is 67% is number one. His KAD is number one. His non-traded kill percentage is number five. He's just absurd on every aspect of that mode. And in that mode, it's actually good to have that kind of like just shut down player on like 1/3 of the map. It allows you to put more resources than elsewhere, where it can penalize you on hardpoint, but on control, it's actually very well. Um, Works very well. So that's why I have Stellium as my number one control player. The objective player of the award right now it's Dashy. Dashy's number one in hardpoint seconds per 10 minutes. Right now he's just under 100. He's at 93.7. He was above that for a while, but he's number one in that, and then he's number one in control ticks per attacking round at 2.8. Again, he was at 3 for a while, but yeah, he's leading the way in both of those. I do some search and destroy metrics as well, but that tends to favor the SMGs. And then yeah, so it's just more of some of the respawn ones where he leads the way. So it's basically the fight really between him and Insight. There's a bunch of other players that have like snuck into that conversation, but have like fallen out. Some of the SMGs like Simp, Envoy, Estriel were in there for a bit. You had Kenny for AR, Draza for an AR. It's kind of tough because your teams have to do well for you to get enough objective work to lead the way. Um, and that's why some of these bottom teams have good objective players, but they're just not good enough as a team to get the objective work to climb that way up. Um, so yeah, and then looking at the clutch one, again, it's just going to be the most clutches won in the season. And if there's a tie, basically I actually track how many clutch opportunities each player gets, 1v1, 1v2, 1v3, 1v4. So I can actually have their clutch percentage. Um, so that will be the tiebreaker. But right now, Dashi, Insight, Vickle, and Abuza are tied with 8 clutches won. Celium has 6. And then we have a bunch of players tied with 5 and 4. So those are the 4 guys leading away on that. And then for content, all CDL and All Star, that's gonna be way at the end of the season. So for now, those are my Breaking Point awards. Love to know what you guys think of those. Um, if there's a award you think I'm missing, what your award, top fives would be for some of these. I'm actually really interested because for these rankings, it's usually my rankings, and then I give it to some people for some feedback on what they would change, and then we kind of like roll with it. To end the year, it's going to be voted on by a whole panel of people, so we can get a bunch of different opinions and come down to the best ranking we possibly can. So I'm actually really excited about that. Again, that's something I really think has been missing in Call of Duty, just so we can look back and have these discussions, have these get fans to have these discussions, and have these things to remember for future years. So I'm actually really excited to do these at the end of the year. But yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for this one, guys. Again, this is gonna be my first episode. I'm just gonna call it the Easy Mac podcast for now, unless I think of something better. But I think I'm gonna do these weekly and be able to have have a platform to give some of my opinions. Because again, in one of these future episodes, I am gonna break down my thoughts on challengers, my thoughts on the CDL, um, why people shouldn't be calling for the death of the CDL, because what could be coming, they're not going to love. Uh, just a whole bunch of stuff about what I think about the scene, about going into majors, major qualifier weeks, stuff like that. More of some of the personal stuff that I do, and some sports stuff too. I'll obviously be talking about that. NFL draft coming up. Uh, I'm a Pats fan, so really excited to see if we we finally get a QB that's competent. Um, I'm hoping for. I'm honestly hoping for Drake May. I think I've convinced myself Drake May at the 3rd pick. Have him sit for most of the year behind Jacoby, and then fix some of the issues he's had that last year of college. Because not this year, but the year before, he was actually. Everyone thought he was gonna be the number one. Well, could be the number one pick with Caleb Williams. Like in the mock drafts, they were like 1A, 1B, and now we're going into this where he could fall to number 3. Jalen Daniels is ahead of him. People are talking about JJ McCarthy. I don't understand where his hype's coming from. I will be. Arizona's not going to trade their pick, but the Chargers at 5 will definitely trade their pick. I can't believe Minnesota's going to trade up to grab him. It blows my mind. But they just spent so much draft capital, and there's no way in hell they don't trade up with what they have. So I'm sure they have their sights set on either. There's no way Arizona passes up Marvin Harrison unless the Patriots draft him. Patriots draft him, they'll trade the pick away, um, trade down at least a little bit. They'll try to get one of the USC wide receivers or Washington. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of what you guys can expect in future weeks. Again, thank you guys for your support, for everything I do. It means a lot to me. I'm extremely busy with everything I do. which is why a huge shout out to JP for the YouTube content that he makes. I wish I had the time to be able to put towards doing stuff like that, doing stuff with broadcasts, doing stuff with just making content with people. Um, I just really haven't had the time to be able to do that. That's why I'm recording this at midnight. Um, it just it's really hard for me to do that, but I'm gonna try to keep this one going. Give myself a platform to talk about Call of Duty, talk about some of the stuff, statistical stuff behind the scenes, what goes into some of these matchups, and yeah. Thank you guys. Have a good night. Let me know what you guys think I should talk about next time.